in Sheboygan, but
When did the,
I'm not sure about the year myself. The Ewig brothers were very good fishermen in both Sheboygan and Port Washington. They came here, I understand, from Jones Island as a family in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
And as this harbor of ours was remodeled, the action of the waves was so severe, and they eventually gave up fishing here and moved their rig to Sheboygan. Although, and then trucking on a daily basis, the fish that they trucked back here to Port Washington to be processed and smoked. But they had a much safer mooring in Sheboygan.
so,
Yeah, the ice in Sheboygan was something else.
Yeah, another business that we haven't talked about that we had for a number of years, that we processed our own pickled herring
Oh, yeah.
and then sold them mainly through our own outlets, but we had, for years, we had our own label, shall we say, and we did our own processing.
well, that's something that I don't remember. There's many things that were available in the store, and we would purchase them. And herring was one of the things that I like to eat.
Well, herring was not caught locally or in Lake Superior. They were actually a ocean fish, and we know the same species now as alewife, but they were larger fish, a herring-like fish, and they were caught anywhere from Canada along the east coast on to Virginia, depending on the season. They were
I
spring.
remember going with my parents
Spring run
down
fish.
in the Outer Banks area and contact the fishermen down there, make a contract for their herring for our pickling business. I was 6 years old at the time.
Yeah, they packed them first in salt and in large wooden casks, and that was then shipped to Smith Brothers and other processors in the Midwest with their, again, cured a little more with vinegar and usually onions and put in the wooden pails was the first item before there was glass jars and plastic mugs and so forth, but wooden pails, and that's what we did over there also across the street.
Your competitors at Ma Bench for a long time.
You still see different herrings around like that. Ma Bench, Vita is the number one, and Ma Bench is locally in Milwaukee. So,
And so 5 generations of the Smiths carried on the business.
Right.
And expanded it in many different ways, because besides the restaurant, then you went into the hotel business too.
And then we built the harbor side here in Ports, right? And also we had Dairy Queen. Actually, Dairy Queen on our parking lot next to the restaurant. Then the group of the family had one in West Bend. So it's an extra side thing.
yeah, thinking in the fishing game, it was you mentioned the net shanty, the historic building. But it was our headquarters, and many of you worked in and there, both on the main floor, reeling nets, hauling nets in and out of the reel yard, which was outside. The nets were reeled up and either outside or inside, hauled back and forth, mending, stripping out the fine netting, which became nylon after a while. And originally, I believe, it was cotton netting, and replacing them with new sections. the upstairs was a loft-like thing. It was L-shaped building, but the strong, as we call it, strong new netting, usually up there, placing the leads and the corks and just position on a couple of tight, a pair of tight lines with the netting in between. And a local man named John Bernick was a long-time employee, Bernick, and he was very expert with a netting needle and stringing nets, as were other men too. But it was long and short of the story is we, Smith family, didn't do it all. We had these wonderful people in Port Washington that were our people. Just like in the restaurant, the staff in the kitchen, a group of people that were just loyal and good cooks, and a lot of credit goes to those folks.
So Bernick and Godursky were part of your team?
We had many people in Port Washington, and we had lots of captains like Richard. His nickname was Nigger because he was very dark complected. Richard Nagraki was a longtime captain, and we had many other captains along with that were operating our boats over the years.
Morawski,
right?
Shmuley Morawski, Norbert Perry, he's not local, he came from, I understand, West Virginia or someplace, and Shanghai to go as a fishing boat, and he passed the muster and became the skipper of the boat for quite a number of years.
And of course, Leonard.
Yeah, Cliff Leonard, Learned, I guess his name is, and the Grosser were shore hands. Oh gosh, and others.
Lots of names. Chief Wildhagen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the extent of our story. I guess there's a lot more to tell, but it was kind of a hands-on, ice-cold business to be catching fish, because if either you're working in the wintertime when it was naturally cold, or you're working in the summertime when the fish were all ice and hauling ice, making ice out in Newburgh area, Sackville, Newburgh area, making ice out of the lakes and hauling
So
that
you
in.
made ice then?
Yeah, we had to.
Yeah, it was before ice machines.
In the very beginning, when Gilbert started fishing, and DeLoss for that matter, they had no ice. In those days, the fish that were caught were salted before they were shipped to any distance. Then when, in the winter, of course, you could get ice to help natural ice, but then everyone had ice houses. And as we say, we had this lake, part of called Mud Lake, now part of the Cedarburg Swamp, or Cedarburg Bog as they call it. And we not only got the tamarack poles for our pound net fishing, but we got the ice. And in the spring, right behind the house where you lived, the trucks would come in with their ice had been cut, and we had an ice house. The trucks would come in on a Ayers Plain, a bluff area, and there was a chute that went down in the ice house that unload those blocks of ice, and that ice that we had there had to keep our fish business for the entire year until the next year when there'd be ice again. And of course, around 1940, commercial ice machines started to come, and then it changed the whole manner of worrying about ice houses and such, or ice cutting ice naturally.
Yeah.
And at that point, there's a big difference, a big relief that a machine could produce the ice we needed for all of our fish.
So you made your own ice? then?
Yes, and many people, the butchers, many of the butcher shops would have their own ponds up on the, close onto where Gilson Foundry was in that area. Hairsinger Pond is called, and it wasn't next to the butcher shop,
No.
but they owned that pond. They got their ice there, and they had an ice house. And of course, there are commercial ice companies that had lakes or cut their ice on lakes or whatever. Random Lake and many other lakes in this area, inland lakes, and but ice was a big important item for preservation.
Well, now that ice house on Oakland Avenue, that was a big building.
Oh yes,
But it was designed not only for storing ice, but the heavy netting we had, pond netting, which had to be taken in during the winter months and stored someplace. You couldn't leave it out in the open, and so that was made for the storing nets, as well as the back end of it was back half was cork insulated, and the ice was preserved between the insulation of the cork and sawdust, between the layers of ice to keep them from sinking.
sawdust had to be around all sides of the ice blocks.
Well, yeah,
And
and
insulation.
the ice didn't just lay in there and get to the fish easily. It had to be taken out
Yeah.
in big blocks and hauled and then chipped into chunks and ground up and put in. And the whole process of cutting the ice and getting them into the ice house was an engineering job in February, usually February a year, when the ice in the lake, mud lake as they call it, was clear. It would settle down and there wouldn't be any weeds in the ice.
Did you have a special crew doing that?
Yes, all hands mustered for that, but we relied also on farmmen that in the middle of winter needed an extra line of work. So it took several weeks of that mechanical cutting and hauling.
And as a kid, we would watch when they came to unload the ice down the chute. There'd be old men and young kids there, and when a block of ice would jump the chute and splatter into a million pieces, there'd be a big applause as a big affair to see that ice go flying.
I remember that chute, because it was right
Really?
in
Behind your house.
in our backyard, so
Sure,
to speak.
sure.
And then you had the root cellar there also.
Yeah.
With
That was another
the
thing.
two
And that root salad, which we bought potatoes for our potato salad, which is a round Wisconsin red type potato. And we'd buy the whole amount of a certain farmer, and he would store it in this root cellar. And then on top of it, part of the deal in buying the potatoes for the year, there's enough to last us most of the year, not all the year. But part of the deal was, in the winter, he would go in there with his crew and desprout the potatoes that had started to sprout.
Wow. That was quite a
Yeah,
deal.
that was another bit of hauling back and forth.
Oh, sure.
Things weren't delivered to you exactly. Okay.
And so in 2001, the food service closed.
Right, our wholesale division. Right. That was the last one of our businesses to go. And that was the end of a long time, a long history from 1848 to 2001,
Yes.
over 150 years.
That is wonderful. That is quite a story, and I know that we missed quite a few topics in this conversation, but you certainly have enlightened me.
Well, see, The reason we didn't get to them, you didn't have a six-pack.
Oh, I have some water here. I think too, when you had the business on Grand Avenue, I remember seeing the Miller Brothers, that you maybe were selling some of your, or Miller Brothers was selling some of your products. Because weren't they a distributor of some sort?
Well, Miller Brothers got
Miller,
into
Miller Brothers as individuals were our peddlers or distributors, as we called them then. They were truck peddlers, were they not? They'd have a route and they'd go around and sell our products to rural people mostly. But I don't know what you're referring to is on what, Grand Avenue?
Right, I remember seeing the Miller Brothers trucks there at your,
Well, they became a fish distributor, a food distributor, as did Smith Brothers, and got a nice sized location down in Milwaukee and became quite aggressive in their distribution, and quite possibly they were delivering something to us or buying something from us. I don't know, but that was Miller Brothers. They were the brothers were from Random Lake.
Random Lake,
They were from Random Lake.
originally.
Yeah, and worked for us here and in Milwaukee before they struck out on their own.
well, thank both of you for your interesting conversation and for all that you brought to Port Washington and to Ozaukee County, to Wisconsin, and, well, this whole Great Lakes area, because I didn't realize that Smith Brothers was spread all over.
Yeah, it certainly was. And bouncing around on trucks and so forth and the Michigan areas is quite an experience for me as a young man. Okay.
So we owe a lot to your parents, Lester and Oliver, and to their parents too.
Great.
Because that was really not an easy job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome.